Thank you for joining us on the program. Now, on this segment, we're discussing the perennial fuel scarcity challenge in Nigeria and the way forward. So to discuss this issue with us, we have a guest joining us virtually, and his name is Olabode Sowunmi. He's an energy sector expert and the former legislative aide to the Senate President. So welcome to Market Insights, Olabode Sowunmi.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, and we're glad to have you on the program. So the fuel scarcity challenge in Nigeria, it's been happening too often, and we've seen it. There's fuel scarcity for some weeks, then a few weeks later, the whole matter is resolved. But how come this situation keeps arising every now and then? What is causing this fuel scarcity?
Okay, thank you. You know, when you are not part of a direct part of the supply chain, we can only make informed guesses or make an analysis of the information available to us. So if we look at the existing one, what the NNPC, who is the sole importer, has said is that there is an impediment within the supply chain. In this case, there are thunderstorms that has hindered the transfer of fuel from the mother vessel to the daughter vessel. But left to us, it's not our responsibility to know all the details of the technicalities. I mean, for example, I don't need to be a computer scientist to be able to operate a computer. I need Compaq or HP to give me a system that can work. So it's incumbent on those supplying us fuel to make sure that the fuel gets to us. What we can see and analyze by matter of fact is that any supply chain can have impediments, like in this case, but they should create a system where there's redundancy for the impediments not to be an issue. I mean, for example, if there's a reason why your car has an extra tire, it is not because when you are leaving the house, you are expecting a flat tire, but it is peradventure there's a flat tire, your car can still move. So we expect the authorities and those responsible to be able to create a system, a redundancy system, such that when there are these impediments, they can, I mean, when there are these kind of impediments, when they do happen, it will not cripple or bring the nation to its knees. That's the way we should look at it.
All right. Okay. Quickly, just going by what you have said with regards to the NNPC Limited and, you know, what they could possibly have been going through to cause the problem. A lot of stakeholders or a lot of players in the sector have, you know, opined that there is a little too much power vested on the NNPC, talking about a monopoly, if you like, of powers vested on the NNPC. And this conversation essentially has led to them calling more for the deregulation of the sector. What's your take on this?
Well, I believe to a large extent the sector is deregulated. At the moment, with the advent of the PIA, we have an independent regulator, which is a significant change from what existed before. Because even though the DPR existed as a quasi-regulator in the past, they were more for licensing. But when it came to issue of policy and influence within the industry, both regulatory and operational powers lied within the NNPC. That is no longer the case. Even though the NNPC will have significant influence, the influence will begin to dwindle as the regulators, in this case, NMDPRA and NUPRC, realize their powers, realize their influence, and get more knowledge to do the things they should do. You know, one of the things that is prevalent within social media and the general populace is that we expect instant change in things that do not occur instantly. So within any industry, within any corporation, there is a culture. It's called corporate culture. But there are certain things there are certain changes that are only possible via culture changes. It cannot be made via a law. It cannot be made via a fiat. So for the influence of NNPC to dwindle, for them to have less powers than they have, will take a while. And it has to be something there is going to be a culture change. There is no law, there is no regulation that can force it. Just like if two people are not friends, there are no laws that can make them friends. You can make laws to make them work together, but you cannot legislate brotherhood. So the kind of changes that people are expecting via laws and regulation are changes that are possible via culture change. And there are things that will take a while. So we need to interrogate basically the methods of doing things so that NNPC itself can get the message and change, but we cannot create a law that will just discover them. It's not going to work for the industry.
Okay, yes, Mr. Sowunmi, now I just want to also talk about our local refining now. So how can investments in our local refining capacity and infrastructure development help alleviate this fuel scarcity?
Well, it's not rocket science. If you spend more money, and in this case, Forex, when you get, when you're making arrangements for importation of fuel, but, excuse me, but when you are refining locally, there is some amount of Forex that will preserve. We need to understand that the economic crisis is fundamentally an issue of the falling exchange rate, not really so much of a lot of things that are being, the things that are causing inflation really is about the Forex. So if the amount of money we spend to import fuel changes, and we are able to conserve those USD for local use, then definitely it will affect the economy. It will even affect our capacity and ability to buy. So to that extent, it's a long-term stroke mid-term view of local refining affecting things. It is not an immediate solution. So it's also important to have that kind of cautious optimism with Nigerians. So if all the refineries, including Dangote and all the 3 local refineries, start operating immediately, inflation is not going to come down the next week. There are certain things that won't just happen. There are things when we continue to do them and we are consistent doing them, that over time they will impact the economy and have the desired effects that we're expecting it to have.
Mr. Sowunmi, let's stay on that for a little while longer. Now, all of these charges put together, which would include, or that's besides the landing cost, which would include the Nigerian Ports Authority charges, vessel charges, the Maritime Administration and Safety charges, and of course, other distribution costs are all in dollars. They all charge in dollars, and some experts are calling for a radical review, to this issue to drive down the price of, petrol costs, as you were. Now, cue in the dollarization of our economy. What's your take on this? Do you share the sentiment?
Well, I'm not an expert in economics, but there are some parts of economics that makes sense, and there's some part of it we are involved in terms of energy economics and all that. So from that perspective, I can offer an insight, but not necessarily an expert insight. So when we look at the economic implications of the charges, if we dollarize our economy, we have to understand the implication, because it's not just for the port charges, it's not just the maritime charges, it's also custom charges. As of today, anybody that is doing business who brings in goods of whatever, I'm talking about those doing trading, whether it be equipment and all that, who bring in whatever, it does not help the local consumers if the tariffs on it are related to the dollar, primarily because it's the consumers who are inside do not do their transactions in dollar, except, of course, we are expecting that the farmer is going to start selling his own goods based on dollar rate. The person who sells pure water will have to start calibrating the cost of pure water based on dollar rates, in which case we are even technically killing the naira. So what those who are behind the thinking for this tariff should do is that even if they want to put these tariffs at a kind of dollar parity, it has to be a dollar parity that can make the economy work, which means it is a dollar rate with which we want the naira to be. So if, for example, we want the naira to be at 250 to the dollar, in terms of that's where the final thinking of the government should be, then that is what the dollar rate should be for tariffs. Because you first need the economy to be buoyant. It is when the economy is buoyant that taxes matter. Because if the economy is not buoyant, people are not really able to pay taxes, and there comes a lot of backhand dealings in all these things, and overall, it's still the economy that suffers. So there's a catch-22 in this. But like I said, it's not a fully expert view. It's just my view based on the dynamics of things I see in the industry.
Okay. Okay, yes, Mr. Sowunmi, now let's talk solutions to this. Let's look at options for possible solutions to this situation now. Can Nigeria leverage an alternative energy source to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels and ensure a more stable energy in the future?
Well, whether it be alternative energy or fossil fuel or renewable energy or nuclear, the first thing that matters is that it's affordable. So people seem to assume that because it's renewable energy, it's cheaper. No, it's not. In fact, a lot of times, when you compare cost for sizable amounts, renewable energy is actually more expensive. But when you're talking about pico or micro level, maybe for 3.5 kilowatts, which will cover a home, there are good options for the solar and the renewable energy options. I mean, you can't be thinking of having a hydro source of energy that will just be supplying 5 kVA or 10 kVA. They deal with mega sizes. So the key thing there is that there's no one size fits all. For the villages, for places that have very small demands, the renewable energy can be a good option. But when you're talking about cities, when you're talking about mega demands, when you're talking about industry, about huge consumption, you have to go for the cheapest. And it's important for those who are putting their voices in the energy mix to understand that we first need energy before we start talking about the sources of energy. For even the strongest nations who are the greatest advocates of renewable energy use some of the dirtiest energy sources. As at today, globally, 40% of global electricity comes from coal, which is dirtier by far than oil. And that coal, more than 3/4 of it is not in Africa. So, I mean, if you remove South Africa from that, you will have maybe close to 80% of it out. So we need to understand that it is first energy survival before you start talking about the sexy options for energy. So that would be my contribution on that.
Mr. Sowunmi, very, very quickly, in less than a minute, if you can, let's talk a little bit about the federal government's subsidy arrangement, as you were. There's a partial subsidy on the commodity, as you were, right now, as opposed to the initial plan. Matter of fact, it's according to a report submitted to the president by the finance minister, Mr. Wale Edun. Fuel subsidy is projected to take about 5.4 trillion naira this year, as against 3.6 trillion naira budgeted for it last year. So is this sustainable, and for how long? Can you do that in like 30 seconds or less, please?
Well, in one word, the subsidy arrangement for oil and gas as it is not sustainable. But the fact that it's not sustainable does not mean the solution is a removal. So there has to be a coordinated way of getting like minds, intellectuals, to think through the solution. Not all human solutions are answerable in black and white or yes and no. So there has to be an aggregation of experts and forward thinkers to think out a solution.
Energy sector experts, many thanks for joining us on Market Insights this morning.
It's been great having you on the program.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's take a look at the CBN selling rates for the dollar for this week. That's from Monday, Tuesday, for the entire week, just the CBN rates for the dollars. So on Monday, it was 1,500 naira to $1. And on Tuesday, it was also 1,500 naira to $1. On Wednesday, it reduced to 1,464 naira to $1, and on Thursday was also 1,464 naira to $1, and the same thing with today, Friday, 1,464 naira to $1. So that's the CBN dollar selling rates for this week from Monday to Friday. Thank you so much for watching Market Insight this morning as we discuss the perennial fuel scarcity challenge and way forward to its solutions. And we were able to have this discussion. I want to thank my guests, our guests, Olabode Sowunmi, the energy sector expert, and also David Adonri, our chartered stockbroker, as we discussed issues affecting the Nigerian stock market and also our energy sector. It's been a pleasure having our guests on the program to share insights on these matters. So I remain your host, Lavina Emma, and my co-host,
David Chiedu. As always, thank you very much for being a part of Market Insights today, Friday. Let's pray and hope that your weekend will be fantastic because, of course, what the bulk of Nigerians are going through at the moment, vis-a-vis what we just, spoke about, fuel scarcity and all of that, isn't the most palatable situation. However, as I said, we are hopeful that, we will get better in the coming days. Many thanks again for joining us. Until next week, Monday, join us on Market Insight. We'll have a good afternoon.